Hello, everyone.
We are so glad you're here.
Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, pull up a chair around the table here at the For This Moment podcast. My name is Laura Matthews.
And I'm Megan Sternhagen. We're two sisters and Regnum Christi women with a desire to share the beauty of the stories of God's kingdom in the lives of women throughout the world.
Our prayer is that this can be a space to inspire and encourage you in your own journey as you walk day by day, responding to the Father who has called you for this moment. And we're back. Here we are still in this beautiful month of October, enjoying all the saints. Yesterday was Pope John Paul the Great, so enjoyed that day a lot. And today's October 23rd. How are you doing, Meg?
I am doing well. I can't believe we're this far along in October. Like I feel like in some ways it feels like the Eucharistic Congress was just a few days ago. So the fact that we're months away from it now is like, oh wow. Um yeah, I'm doing well. We had a big event here in the Louisville Catholic community. There is a wonderful organization here called FRP, which
Hmm.
is the Family Renewal Project. And they had their fundraising dinner last night. Pope John Paul II is their patron. So they had a relic of his there. And there was, hundreds of people from all around the Louisville, Southern Indiana, Cincinnati community. They're a wonderful organization. So just to my listeners, look them up. Their tagline is counseling, courses, and community. So they do all sorts of amazing things from teaching theology of the body. They do courses in schools to like teach theology of the body to teenagers. They have a counseling group that they work with. There's all sorts of awesome things coming from them. So that was really fun. We got to go out sans kids, so that was
Hmm.
that was uh that was a fun night out on the town.
Hmm.
One of our friends who is very involved in the community, he invented some cocktails for the dinner that night. He brewed some mead, and one of them was called they had the papal port and Carol's cocktail. So that was fun. So
Very
yeah,
apropos.
yes, exactly. So besides that, just living my merry life in my old Kentucky home. How about you, Laura? What's up?
Well, I also had the opportunity to go to a gala. So we had the RC Atlanta Gala every year. Well, at least the last 3 years that I've been able to go, it's been at the Atlanta Aquarium. So it's pretty
Ooh.
fun because you see the beluga whales in the background, and it's just a really beautiful family night. Over 600 people came, and the theme this year was on the domestic church and the ministry to the
Oh.
family. So that just speaks right to the heart. And I think I teared up several times during the night because of the testimonies of people that have been touched through our beautiful spiritual family. And just seeing the little child, the challenge girls and the conquest boys, but then also how they minister to married couples and husbands and
Hmm.
wives and just the whole family. I just truly love that part of our mission. And one of the auxiliary bishops of Atlanta spoke, and he said that he had a gathering a couple of years ago with seminarians, and they said, like, if you could give us one word of advice or something that we need to really work for in the church, what would it be? And he just said 3 words: ministry to families. He said, that's it.
Hmm.
Just minister to families. And
Hmm.
so that was just very convicting and beautiful, and an opportunity to celebrate in family, for families, and for the building of the kingdom. So really enjoyed that. And yeah, things don't slow down over here. So tomorrow we have 3 young women coming for a come and see here in Atlanta. So that's just a vocational discernment retreat opportunity. So very grateful for the Lord of the Harvest to send young women who are possibly looking at the vocation and what God might be calling them to. So it's gonna be a fun weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. Well, Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and introduce our interviewee for this podcast. Um, sorry, guys, we're going to have to edit that part out. Manny is downstairs screaming.
I can't hear
Oh,
him.
no. Neither can I.
You really can't hear him?
No.
No.
Okay. Pardon me for 2 seconds.
Okay.
I was just
Oh,
afraid that was going to be me just saying that.
I know. Megan often says, Laura, like she'll write me and be like, Laura, sorry, he's screaming or whoever's screaming. And I'm like, literally, I can't even hear that. So, yay for Zoom and the capacity to block out background noise.
Amazing, right? I know. I
Yeah.
told Brian, I was like, look, I can actually get in my car and just drive somewhere and sit in the parking lot. Or you have to keep the kids out of the house, or you have to keep the kids in the house, one way or the other.
Oh my goodness.
You guys are super moms. Meg, literally, we could leave that. We could totally leave that in the podcast
Oh,
because
yay.
this is just life. And moms that are listening to this, you probably do have babies screaming behind you, and it's totally fine.
hmm
So,
Well, he's very excited because we switched license plates from Indiana to Kentucky, and Daddy gave him the old Indiana's license plate. So Manny's like over the moon that he gets to like hold this and have it
oh, it
and
was screaming
treasure
of
it.
joy
It
then.
was screaming of joy, exactly. He just had to show it to me. So, yep. Well, crisis averted. Anyway,
Hmm.
so we have with us today my dear friend Amber Starr. She's here from Indiana. So Amber, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
So Amber, as you probably know, we have a tradition here on the podcast where we do a little few minutes of like get to know you, who are you? And one of the questions that I always ask, which is kind of fun, but one of the questions I always ask is, since we're sitting around the table together as like a virtual sisters at the moment, if you could be serving us something to eat, whether it be small or big, casual or formal, what would you be serving us?
You know, if we were just sitting and chatting like little friends at the table, like we so often actually have, Megan,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
actually.
I would love to offer you tea and muffins and just sit and visit as we enjoy a sweet little snack. But I also would
Mm.
love to have just families together. And for that, my favorite thing is to have people over for like a Sunday lunch. And our family really enjoys like a kind of Spanish tradition of tapas. We have
Uh,
olives, cold meats, cheeses, dips, fresh bread. And that's just what we always have every Sunday lunch because it's fun and easy and quick to prepare after Mass. And I love having people over for that meal because it's really low stress.
Oh, you can't see Laura's face is like lighting up like a Christmas tree.
you say tapas, and I'm like, where and when? That's awesome. I love that
Oh,
you open your house on Sundays for people to come just like it's like a day of fellowship and communion. So that's a great idea.
It is something fun that we've been trying to do more and more.
Mm.
so Amber, can you take a couple seconds to tell us like who you are, where you are, what's your life look like right now?
Sure, absolutely. So I live northwest of Indianapolis. I have three boys, 9, 7, and 5, and a little girl who is 2 years old. I'm married to an amazing Catholic man who I just can't even imagine what my life would be without him. And yeah, he truly is my best friend and a huge support for me. Um, I am the youngest of 5 kids. My family is spread all across the country. And I have known Regnum Christi and been involved in it since I was about 12 or 13. And
Wow.
we have a section here in the Indianapolis area that I'm also blessed to be a part of.
Wow.
Though,
So lifelonger.
yes, to clarify though, I did not, most of my life, I have not been in Indiana, but it is now the place I have lived the longest.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
really? Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amber, I feel like you've kind of lived in several extremes. I feel like you've got quite the like world traveler feel about you of just living in so many different places. Um, so like usually what we ask at the beginning is like what we're here gathered together to is to share stories of the kingdom of like how God has touched your heart and how he came into your heart and changed your life. And so if we were to look back on your story of you were born in
Texas.
Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say Alaska, but I messed it up in
I
Texas.
know. I
Okay.
moved to Alaska very shortly thereafter. I hadn't turned 2 yet when we moved to Alaska, but I
Okay.
was actually
Okay.
born in Texas.
So can you share a little bit about like your early life or like when when do you feel like God first like really touched your heart, changed your heart?
That is, I mean, obviously he's been there working this entire time from the family he chose for me. That he chose to put me in a family that I'm blessed to have. Both my parents Catholic, all of my grandparents are Catholic, all of my great grandparents were Catholic. As far back as I know of my family, we've been gifted with the Catholic faith handed down to us, which is just a tremendous blessing. But then also in my own personal life, besides just growing up with the faith, um, I knew the faith more as a child from a very intellectual perspective. We lived the faith. We always were going to Sunday mass. We started going to daily mass after a while. We would pray the rosary as a family. But for me, at least, it was very much duties and intellectual understanding of why the Catholic faith is right, rather than a relationship or like something that really my heart was engaged in. And that didn't start for me until I met the movement. And I always say that I can't help but love Regnum Christi because through it, I came to know Christ as a person and was gifted a relationship with him.
Mm.
And so it was only when when I was in ECYD, I would say I started to know him. But I don't think it was until my senior year when I went to the pre-candidacy. And then actually after that, when I joined consecrated life at the age of 19, that I actually started to experience a relationship of friendship and love with him.
Mm.
Mm.
I love that to go from knowing him to loving him. That's so beautiful. Like that natural progression, right? That it's almost like you fell in love with your best friend, right? That's like every girl's dream is to have that happen, you know? So that's
Mm.
really. And who was the first person? How did you meet Regnum Christi, or was it a legionary, or how did you get to discover the charism?
It's a crazy story. We had been in Alaska for 10 years. When I was almost 12, we moved from Alaska to Austin, Texas. And we went to Houston for a Human Life International Conference, so HLI. And there, the Legionnaires had a booth. They met my mom. They saw that she had sons, and they were like, "Oh, what's your phone number?" And then, not too long after that, a woman from Monterrey, Mexico, moved to Austin, Texas, because her husband was studying at the University of Texas, and she wanted to continue her life as a Regnum Christi member. She had given a year as a missionary. Her husband had as well. So she drove, I think it was to Dallas, to go to some Regnum Christi events. And the legionary there is the one who had met my mom. And he said, "What? You live in Austin? No, what are you doing driving here? Here, call this woman and start a section there." And she did. And she was my
Wow.
first ECYD team leader, and she was amazing. My family has stayed in touch with their family throughout all of these years.
Wow.
And they are just a beautiful, zealous couple. Actually, beautiful short story. Later, during the years that I was consecrated, I was assigned to a school in Monterrey, Mexico to work. And her daughter, that was the school her children were at, and her daughter was there, and I was able to be the spiritual director of her daughter.
Wow, full
Oh.
circle. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Wow. Just love that. Only God can do those kind of things. That's amazing.
absolutely.
Yeah, and how neat that the Legionary was like, no, like don't drive all the way up to Dallas. Start it there in Austin, and
Mm.
call this lady. Just, where two or more are gathered, there he is, right? So that's awesome that was you guys were the founding families. Like it's kind of like what's that movie? If you build it, they will come.
Yes, yeah.
So just build it and the people will start to come. So
Mm-hmm.
so you were 12 years old then when you met Regnum Christi, and how long were you in ECYD, and how were those years for you?
I loved it. It was awesome. It was all my friends. We were super involved. I had a friend who joined, and it was so neat because she ended up telling us after the first year, and we were so casual. We were such a small group. We came up with what we were going to cover. We had no, textbooks or anything of like what ECYD is supposed to be. But the consecrated did come and visit us frequently, which was a
Mm.
huge blessing. And one of my friends who had joined, she was like, I've learned more in this 1 year of ECYD than I have in all my years of CCD.
Mm.
And it wasn't textbook. It was living the faith and trying to do apostolic projects and
Yes.
trying to do, prayer together, etc. And so we, I was there in ECYD for all those years, loving it, trying to be an apostle. And then when I think it was 16, um, the consecrated told me that I was too old for ECYD and I needed to join Regnum Christi if I was going to continue. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not joining my mom's team. There's no way I'm going to be in that team with my mother. And she said, no, you don't join your mom's team. You start your own team. And I was like, I'm not sure about that either. And she said, look, I have this woman who can be your team leader. She was, again, another woman from Monterrey, Mexico, living in Austin. Totally different
Wow.
woman, living in a tiny little apartment while her husband studied there at UT. And I called her and asked if she'd be my team leader. She had just had her first baby. And she said, as long as the team meets at my house, I would love to. And so
Wow.
I had just learned how to drive. I had my license. I would drive around. I'd round up all my friends. We'd drive over to her house. And she was such an amazing team leader. She gave us the transition course, the introduction to Regnum Christi. She would lead encounters with Christ for us. It was beautiful. And it was also a beautiful example for us to see, this woman who didn't have a car leading Regnum Christi from her home with her baby, screaming next to her. And we as teenage girls loved it.
That is so, I hope that the young adults that are listening to this podcast just see that it can just be that simple. You just gather your friends together, go to the home of someone, and doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be a perfect situation. I mean, that doesn't sound like a perfect situation, like having a newborn baby, they just moved. I'm sure it was tiring because the husband's trying to study, but it was like, nope, I will open my doors and yeah, like it bears fruit, right? So, and how
Absolutely.
cool for you as a 16-year-old to see someone just a little bit older than you living out their Regnum Christi charism. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. And then how did what like so that was where you first met Jesus and like you said you got to know him. Could you share a little bit about the like where you felt like he was gathering you to himself and preparing you for what your mission is for this moment, as we always say, like it's just like a moment to look back and see how he so lovingly prepared the path. So
Mm-hmm.
what were the years of falling in love with Jesus then for you?
That's something that's just, I feel like it's a constant spiral that
Mm,
I can see from very young how that was beginning in my life, through ECYD, through my knowledge of my faith, um, through all, even I remember when I was little, I would always get all these holy cards of Mary that I never tried to get. They would get sent to me or handed to me, or at my first communion, people gave me pictures of Mary. And I remember looking at them and just thinking, like, I don't have a relationship with this woman. I don't really know her. Like, yeah, I know about her, but like, she wants me.
Mm-hmm.
She's like trying to make something happen, and that didn't happen until years later. But just I constantly felt that. But I think it's just continually going in this spiral where you're always going up, and you're
mm,
you're always going. You feel like you're back at the same spot,
yes.
but you are in some ways, but you're up higher. And then you're just, again, he's bringing you constantly deeper into that relationship with him. So the years of
Mm-hmm.
following in love were at, when I was in the pre-candidacy and when I was consecrated, it was hours of prayer and adoration
Hmm.
during which he would just speak to me. At the beginning, when my spiritual directors have been such a blessing to me throughout my life. To have had consecrated women of Regnum Christi and then legionaries leading me spiritually essentially since the age of 12. And that I've been able to have spiritual direction handed to me on a silver platter when so many others have to go seek it out. Honestly, I should be so much holier than I am because I've been given so much.
Oh my,
But
we could all say that. Like we're all children of ECYD and Regnum Christi. I mean, all three of us went to the pre-candidacy at one point or another. So
yes, but it is like real in some of those spiritual directions, like my spiritual directors were demanding, which was so good for me because especially before when I was younger, I was so confident and full of just I knew how to be a saint and I knew I was going to work my tail off and achieve it.
mm,
And they just helped me so much. And there was a specific spiritual direction where my spiritual guide, I thought I was doing what it took to become a saint because I was trying and I was praying and I was trying to live virtue even when I didn't want to. And she said, you know what? Go figure out who you are and don't come back until you have. And I went and cried for like 3 days because I was confronting myself and who I was and learning with Christ to accept that. And then, I went back to spiritual direction and we talked about it. And she's like, awesome. Now you can start growing.
mm,
And I have had different moments like that in my life over and over. And so that was when I was consecrated. But then when I first got married, my thought was, God wants great things from me because he has given me so much. And he wants me to do, bring so many souls to him and do great things for him. And so now that he's not calling me to consecrate life anymore, he must be calling me to be this amazing mom. And I'm going to have all these kids and I'm going to be so great at bringing them to Christ because I've experienced him so much. But he sent me 3 years of infertility.
mm,
3 years during which I was going, it wasn't pain and sorrow because I wanted a child so badly. It was pain and sorrow because I was like, God, what do you want me to do?
mm,
Why, when I thought I was supposed to bring these souls to you that you were going to put in my hands, are these souls not coming? What is it that you're expecting of me? And what he said to me over and over and taught me during those years was again Amber, I love you so much that I'm willing to sacrifice a good you could bring me, a good that would be good for me and other souls and the church in order to have your heart.
mm.
And I would be willing to never have you have children if that's what it took for you to understand that it's you and your heart and your soul that I want and that's important to me. And I think he gave me those 3 years to slowly come to embrace that.
Wow.
And then at the end of embracing that and saying, okay, there wasn't a definitive movement of embracing. It was just a constant trying to embrace that. Then he said, okay, now I'm going to purify you and bring your heart closer to me in a totally different way. Now you're going to be a mom. And my 4 beautiful children came after the doctor told me that medically, he's like, there's no way you're going to have kids unless you have surgery. Yeah. And then I was scheduled to have surgery. And 2 months before we could have surgery, I was expecting my first child.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So sorry, that's a long answer to your question. Sorry, Laura, but that's
No, that's exactly that's exactly like I just love I love the image you started with the circular like the it's just so I guess when you were talking I had in my mind as if we were going up a mountain and sometimes when you go up a mountain you have to it seems like you're going in circles. Like wait, I've already seen that scene, but you're seeing it from a different part of the ascent, right? And
yeah.
and you can see more clearly and greater horizon. And it just sounds like as, Jesus led you through ECYD to Regnum Christi, to the precandidacy, living consecrated life, and then being purified in your years of infertility, and then finally to be a mother. It just was so beautiful to kind of imagine you going up in this ascent with him and in him. And it's just beautiful how you speak of it all as part of his beautiful plan. Like not once were you like, yeah, so then I realized I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, or, I took some kind of detour in my life, in the book of life, I took a detour. No, it was like all part of his beautiful story of your life. So yeah, I just really
It's very Narnian, I think. The phrase that came to my mind was further up and further in. And that
Yes.
scene from
Yeah.
the last battle, which I mean, last battle, like you can argue it's kind of a weird book, but that ending bit when they get to the real Narnia and they're
Mm.
running and it's further up and further in and they
Mhm.
just keep going and they're not tired, but they feel like they could run forever and they're going deeper and deeper into like what it really is. That's what I was thinking of when you were talking. But along the same lines, we had a really wonderful homily this weekend, and Father was talking about a quote. He mentioned a quote from C.S. Lewis again, C.S. Lewis, that we desire God, or we seek God only so much as the mouse seeks the cat. And I was thinking about that because it's like we think that we're on this hunt for God. And like when you were talking about like, what do I need to do? I've got these things to do. I'm going to work my butt off and I'm going to become holy. Gosh darn it. But
Right.
it's like it's not so much that we are seeking him, but like it's him seeking us.
Yes.
And I had a beautiful encounter with Christ just a few days ago with my new team here in Louisville. And we were talking about the gospel of this weekend, which is the blind man sitting on the roadside. And we were talking about like how much he had to do to get Jesus's attention. He had to sit there for who knows how long. He had to like yell through this. The gospel says this multitude of people. So he had to like probably scream his lungs out to get Jesus to hear him. And then he had to deal with everyone being like, be quiet. And he had to keep calling out. And then finally Jesus came to him, and then Jesus asks him, what do you seek? And he says, Master, I want to see. And Jesus knew what was going to happen. Jesus knew he was going to be there. Jesus knew what he was going to ask for. But it was that act of searching, that act of it was for his good. It was for his heart. It was for him to grow, for him to the act of seeking God was what he needed to grow closer. Like God doesn't need that from us. It's for our own good that we go on that hunt, that we're searching because like he wants us more than we want him. Like he desires us. He longs for us. You think of that cat and mouse, like the cat is just sitting there and watching, like he knows exactly where it is. He's after it. And I know that it's an imperfect analogy, like Laura said last podcast, imperfect
Mm.
analogy, but just the idea that he longs for us. And so, it's less of what can we do, like to get to him, to get what we want, to get what we need, and let more of that, like that being that we are. And that's again in your story, you said that your spiritual director told you like go figure out who you are. you know
Yeah.
you are a daughter of God, you are beloved, you belong, you are his. And I think like that beggar on the roadside, like we're calling out to him, but he knows where we are at the same time. Like it's this beautiful, like I just had so many analogies and thoughts going through my head when you were telling your story. But I mean, I feel like we've mentioned certain parts of this like throughout our years of friendship, but I don't think I'd ever heard you phrase it that way. And that's
Mm.
just, I think it's so beautiful to be able to look back and see the beauty of your most intense moments of suffering and of longing for him, and to see that he was there with you the whole time, like that he was so close to your heart even through those years of not being sure what he was going to ask you to do next.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And what you're saying of him being, as you said, imperfect image, but that cat who's there, and we don't have to seek him out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that has been a constant learning process for me because that's not the way I first knew and understood, who God was. I always thought of him more as the one expecting more of me, the one who was there to judge me, the one who was there to, keep everybody in order. And just that constant learning of that's not it at all. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
there's that aspect, but he is the one who is pursuing me and willing to sacrifice anything in order to bring my soul into a deeper relationship with him, and ultimately the eternal embrace.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a beautiful, yeah, I hope that people, if you need to just pause that for a second and just take that in, just the love that he has for us, that he is
Mm-hmm.
seeking us. And I love that poem, The Hound of Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yes.
he's the one in ardent pursuit after our hearts, and that's what I love too about the way that we speak about the Lord. Jesus, who goes out to meet people in the concrete realities of their life, who goes to call them to himself, to form them, and then he launches them as apostles. But it's very active in the part of Jesus. He's the one doing everything, and all we have to do is, I just like love what you just said about the eternal embrace. All we have to do is fall into that embrace, with just being, and allowing ourselves to be transformed, through him and with him. But it's hard for our modern mind, I think, to get out to get like, wait, but it's what I do that matters, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we've said on the podcast before, we're human beings, not human doings, and
Good point. Yeah.
it's a hard concept to get, that we don't have to do anything to earn God's love. We just have
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
surrender. So could you share with us a little bit, how you see that surrender, or that love story continue in your life now, as a mom of those beautiful children, and I'm sure passing down to them what you received, as a young girl.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Um, Something that being a mom extends, I don't know, just stretches my heart in a way I never imagined. Um, I don't know, having grown up in a family, you imagine it a certain way. Obviously, I knew I was gonna, give myself to my children, pour myself out, but I never realized it was every single second.
Hmm.
Like the proverbial, oh, you can't sleep through the night. I haven't slept through a night without nursing a child in more than 9 years, right? But that wasn't the hard part for me. The hard part was like the tiny little things that nobody mentions, like you're never going to go to the bathroom by yourself. Little things like that, that just like I couldn't even have imagined, where God is just stretching me and stretching my
Mm-hmm.
heart and teaching me that I can give more than I thought I could.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would never have expected that that was something that somehow was going to be a good thing in my life and make
Mm-hmm.
me be a better person. It just never even was on my radar. But continually, what I find is, and thanks to the years that God had called me to consecrated life, I very, very much learned there vocation is first, right? Apostolate is hugely important. Vocation is first. And my vocation now is as first a wife and then a mother. And so I realized this when my oldest was little. I was trying to get some project done. I can't remember what. And he was fussing. And I was looking at him with annoyance because I couldn't get my project done. And then suddenly it was just, it was the Holy Spirit. It was a little whisper of like, wait, doesn't vocation comes first? What is your
Mm-hmm.
vocation here? And going like, oh, it's him. And
Mm-hmm.
anything that causes in me this internal tension of, wait, you're in my way. You're an obstacle at this point. Another beautiful thing that I learned when I was consecrated, they would always say, there's three ways to view people, right? They can either be an obstacle in your path, they can be a means to an end, or they can be a beneficiary of your generosity.
Hmm.
And realizing I'm seeing my child, who is my, very high on my list of priorities, and he's part of my vocation, as an obstacle to
Mm-hmm.
whatever this project I'm trying to do is. And therefore my priorities are skewed, and I need to reprioritize, and he is my priority right now, and I need to pick him up and take care of him and set my project aside. And so it's this constant being stretched to realize that it's not that, again, going back to the doing, right? It's not about, all these things that I think I'm supposed to do, or that I want to do, or that I feel like need to get done, but letting myself pour myself out for, my priorities are God, my husband, my children, and everything else falls in fourth or lower place. And that is for me just this constant stretching of shifting what I want to do or think I should do and doing what serves my vocation first. I don't know if that really answers it, but that's that came to my mind and heart when you asked that question.
No, it definitely does. I think that there's and this is I think a semi-modern issue that modern mothers have to deal with, where it's like we are being torn by so many different goods. Like there are so many different amazing things that we could be doing with our kids or with our family or for them. And, you know, whether it be the many different programs or the different, you know, and this isn't to say this isn't a call to people to like not do anything, because every person has that individual gift that they're called to give, but that is going to look different for each person. And if it comes to the detriment of your primary vocation, then you need to, like you said, realign, reconsider. Like I've mentioned the story on here before where I was so caught up in the breast milk donating world that I was like, hush, children, I must help people. He was like, you know, like, okay, like you said, like you're an obstacle, you're in my way of this great thing that I'm trying to do for the Lord. And he's like, no, I need you to put that down. I need you to be with your children. And I think that, like you said, it's a stretching. It hurts. It hurts. It does not, does not feel nice. I
Yes.
mean, as much as we love our children to unto the point of wanting to give our lives for them, having to get up and get them another glass of water or to clean up whatever it was that they just broke, or have to answer like between their squabbles of like they took this from whoever like for the millionth time. It's like it's those smaller things I think that can get more on our nerves, because they are so monotonous and so ordinary and so constant that you're like, Lord, this can't be the crusade that I'm meant to go on for you. Like this can't be the battle that I'm fighting for your kingdom, for your glory. Like surely surely
Mm-hmm.
there's some other thing I could be doing for you. And you know, I it's like us making those meals, educating those children, you know, nursing their wounds, like those things, those are the lines of the song that we are singing to God every single day. As boring and monotonous and like you said, like it's painful, these small things, but like it's our path to heaven. It is our very special stairway to heaven that is custom made for us. So yeah.
Absolutely. And just you guys were mentioning at the beginning how yesterday was the feast of Saint John Paul II.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote that I absolutely love that he says that pertains exactly to what you're saying, Megan. I love how you just said the crusade I'm meant to go on, and also the lines of the song that we're singing for God. Like, wow, those were inspired, Megan. But his quote of Tracy too, he says, to maintain a joyful family requires much from both the parents and the children. Each member of the family has to become, in a special way, the servant of others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's just that becoming a servant of your families in so many ways. Like you said, you know, cleaning up the mess that they made. For me, it's not so much what they broke as, oh my goodness, cleaning up when your kid is sick in the middle of the night and they don't make it all the way to the bathroom or those kinds of things. It is that constant death to self to say, you know what, like this is how I'm not only, you know, showing my child that I love him concretely so that he can better understand God's love for him, but also how I am right now called to be a martyr in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, you know, like you said, the crusade I'm called to go in. But the hard part about it is nobody knows and nobody tells me good job. And you know, my husband does sometimes, but half the time he's up, you know, we always get up and okay, who's going to clean the child? Who's going to clean the floor?
Let's divide and conquer here.
Right. You know, at 2 a.m. but that's, and so, besides the supporting each other, nobody knows that.
Mhm.
Nobody gives you glory for that. I was talking to a cousin years ago who she was saying how she had an experience right after her second child was born of dealing with both her kids at the same time and how difficult it was and how frustrating. And she was like, that was when I knew it was time for maternity leave to be over and to get back to work.
Mm.
Because people there would affirm her because it wasn't as hard and demanding for her, whatever her job was. And is that to say that a career is bad? Absolutely not.
Mm.
But for her, that was easier because there was more structure, control, praise, recognition than dealing with her two little kids.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and along those lines, like I started this little phrase with my kids years ago, which was it was an attempt to teach them politeness, mama, get me whatever. And I'd say, oh, can you say that kindly? And then I started to say, mama is not a servant. Say that properly or say that kindly. And I was hit kind of like over the head with a brick recently where I was reading the gospel and I came across the line from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who said, I came to serve and not to be served. And I was like, oh, okay. Like if my Lord came to be the servant of all, like who am I to not serve my family and my children? Like I feel like it is so countercultural to come at to come at your family with the idea of like, I am not here for recognition or for the glory and the praise and the claim. Like it's I am here to serve and I'm going to do it cheerfully. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability and I'm going to do it out of love, and trying to strive for that is so against what society is saying about like treat yourself and get like, be seen, be heard, be whatever. Like, and I mean, that's a whole separate conversation. But I think when I came at it, from the idea of like my Lord came to serve. I need to be right there with him. I need to be serving with him. I need to be serving him. If I need to be imitating him, there's a wonderful book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which I highly recommend to everybody. Go stop what you're doing and go read it now. Hurry. No, just kidding. But he mentions in there how Jesus is meant to be imitated. He says, learn from me. And so when you go to the gospel and you're reading it, you need to be reading it like a student teacher. You're looking at him and you're saying, what did he do? How can I do that in my life? And for me, reading that line, I came to serve and not to be served. And I would just it really wrecked me to the point of like, I am here to serve my family. I'm here, and by serving, love them, and by serving, lead them to heaven, to Jesus. Um, and I think that that's for us moms, but I think everyone does have that experience. But I think for Amber and I, that we can speak specifically to this particular experience of just of that hidden life, of that quiet um yeah, that just being very hidden. So, but I'm sure as consecrated Laura, I'm sure that not everything that you do is acclaimed over a megaphone or seen at all. So I think it's kind of a universal experience.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just think too, I guess while both of you were speaking, I what came to my mind is that God is not a God of contradiction. So if he's giving you this vocation to be a wife and a mother, then he's not asking you to do something that would be detrimental to that, you know? And
Mhm.
I guess while you were speaking, Amber, I went back in my mind to think about that young mom in Austin that had the newborn baby, and it was like, okay, God is calling her to be a wife and a mother, but he was also giving her this great gift of opening her doors to these young
Mhm.
high school, college age girls that just wanted to sit around, literally, sit at her feet and probably learn. Yeah, like you said, the transition course and everything, like learn from her. And I was thinking, wow, what a gift you must have been to her because she could still live out her vocation as a mother, new mother and everything, but at the same time continue to be mutually enriched by other Regnum
Mm-hmm.
Christi sisters. And sometimes I think we, because of Instagram and other social media, we think that everything has to be perfect and pristine to be able to do apostolate or live the mission. And it could look like just opening the doors and putting some tapas on the table,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
having, fellowship after Sunday Mass that, I think, going back to the little thing I mentioned at the beginning of ministry to families, I think a lot of it has to do with just opening your doors and sharing life with people. I think it's Michelle Benzinger on the Abiding Together podcast that says we do life with these young adults, or these young adults do life with us. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just allowing people to be in your homes and see healthy relationships of loving couples, husband and wife loving each other and serving their children can be a huge mission to a world that is so broken and isolated and, especially in the family. So I think just being mothers and offering that, every time I go to the family center in Indianapolis, I'm edified beyond words by the beautiful witness of gospel living that I see in between mothers and children and mothers helping other mothers. So I think that in itself is a mission. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. During the years I was consecrated, something that really motivated me was the phrase of St. Paul where he says, we're called to be all things to all people, to bring at least a few to Christ. And I was constantly pushing myself to try to be that. Like, what does this person in front of me need me to be right now? Not to be inauthentic, not to be like a weird, wishy washy, nobody can pin you down who you are and what your personality is or anything, but just like, but like, who does this person need me to be right now? Like, how can I help them to be all things to all people, to bring at least a few to Christ? And then there's this beautiful, now that I'm married, there's this phrase that has struck me so often from G.K. Chesterton. I don't have the quote in front of me. I'm sure you can just Google search it and find it, or you probably are familiar with it. But I love it because he's saying, how can it be considered broad to be one thing to all people? So he's kind of talking about like career there, like if you are, whatever that is, and then be considered to be narrow to be all things to one person. And he's referring to motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much the same thing said in a different way. And they both resonate with me so much. When I was consecrated, the phrase that really stood out to me was to be all things to all people. And there were so many times when literally I was done. I was tired. I was an introvert living in a very extroverted world, doing apostolate with people nonstop. And I was ready to be done. And I would push myself, I have to be all things to all people to bring at least a few to Christ. And when I'm now in the vocation that God has me at as wife and mother, that comes this very similar but different words comes to mind, like it's broad right now to be all things to one person.
Hmm. Hmm. That's beautiful. I never connected that quote of G.K. Chesterton with what St. Paul says. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you for that little nugget. I'm gonna go contemplate that. That's really beautiful. And I love how often, Amber, in this conversation, you've referred back to what you've learned, along the journey and how that has been perfected in the present moment for you and how you've unpacked that. You can tell you're a very pondering soul and have kept those like guiding lights, right? And seeing how God has brought that to fruition. So I just want to say I'm very grateful for this conversation. Like Megan, I never really got to hear your whole story sitting down in this way because often when we do sit down at the table, we get interrupted sometimes by
Mm-hmm.
those beautiful children that you all have and
Yeah,
like little.
especially when Amber and I get our eight together, it's like
Exactly. Well, I think it
every
was
few seconds.
very appropriate that Manny was screaming outside your door because I was like, "Oh yes, this is this is a gathering with muffins and tea and just yeah." So thank you. I'm just grateful to both of you, these beautiful Regnum Christi women and mothers, and all that you teach me. And I guess kind of what I'm taking from it is a desire to also be a servant to my community and to the people that God has put on my path. because sometimes it is easier to want to go serve in the highways and byways of the world, but then it's like, and what about the person right next to you, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the call that I had to my heart at the end of this
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Yeah.
If I could just take a second, I just want to be very grateful for uh the servants in my life, like those who for years served me without recognition or even I laugh so much now thinking of like how much my parents did for me without me even acknowledging that it was happening. I just was like, yes, it is good and just and right. You must, it was, they were there to take care of me and I didn't think twice about it. So I think, and from like, I was in the pre-candidacy for 4 years. And when I think of those lovely, wonderful, darling consecrated who gave their blood, sweat, and tears to take care of us teenagers. Like, oh my goodness, like God bless them. God give them many graces. So I am very grateful. I remembering all those who have silently served from my parish priest to my parents to my different formators, spiritual directors throughout my life who very silently served and took care of me and led me to Jesus through that example. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that is such a blessing to have those people in our lives who have really been those servants to us.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of a quote again of John Paul II who said I think it was like days before he passed away, that young people were crowding outside of his window and singing to him and praying for him. And he said, I think the last words he said to the young people were, all my life I've gone to you to find you, and now you come to me. And so I love that quote, thinking about all of you all like going out to your children in the middle of the night, in when they're sick and everything, all your life going out to them, and then one day they will come back and I know, like, come and serve you. So that's the beauty of the family. So
Goodness
yeah.
gracious, Laura, you're making me cry.
Oh,
Oh,
Amber, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sitting around the table with us and taking time out of your busy evening with your littles to just share your heart with us and encourage us on the journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you also for the beautiful friendship that both of you have offered to me and the beautiful example of just staying the path. It doesn't matter what happens on the sides. We follow the path that Christ has set out for us. And you both have given me a beautiful example of that. So thank you.
What'd you say, Meg? Further up and further in.
Further up and further in. Yep.
Further up and further in, dear sisters. God bless you.